Chapter 6. The Spy. They had hardly made it halfway through the test. Jordan found himself underneath the main floor in a sort of maze, the tentacles removed from his stomach to reveal a track of gashes all around his middle, as though he had cut himself with 1,000 razors. They weren't bleeding much, but it still stung like a bitch, and worst of all, he was still naked. The control room must have seen this as a problem. On a table in the corner of the room were a pile of clothes. His clothes, he realized, as he unfolded a familiar blue Tampa Bay Lightning t-shirt and a pair of mottled gray shorts. He couldn't pull them as high as he would have liked, given the cuts, and became grateful the thing which grabbed him hadn't missed a few inches lower. He could feel the layout of the floor ahead of him. Dozens, if not hundreds, of yellow rooms, empty as far as he could tell, arranged in a grid of inconsistent entries and exits. Some rooms had open doors on all sides, others only one. The shag carpet below his feet felt dirty, old even, though he knew this could only be an illusion. Unarmed, he made his way through the first entry, where he sensed a large, hunched creature form from the floor a few rooms behind him. He only made it to the third room before the alarm started blaring. A loud, slow-crawling whoop echoed through the entire floor like an industrial fire alarm. The maze of rooms quickly lost its color, and the default white blocks in front of him rearranged themselves into a kind of guideway to a brightly marked exit doorway. "This is not a test," a commanding voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "Training is over for today. Please make your way to the main floor as quickly as possible." Surely they wouldn't trick us like that, Jordan thought, moving swiftly up the stairs but keeping his eye out for anything out of the ordinary. He knew the alarms were real when the staircase emerged into the upstairs hallway. The cubes up here were moving fast, but still repositioning themselves to a default flat state. The only exception came from near the center, where he could see everyone gathered around someone on the floor. His vision failed him, but his feet revealed it to be Emma. She can't actually be hurt, he thought. Training accidents did happen, albeit rarely, but Emma was the PM's daughter. There was no way Garen would let something happen to her, was there? He rushed over, nearly slipping barefoot on the smooth cube floor, which was now lacking any sort of texture. His curiosity subsided as soon as he approached. Even with one eye, Jordan could see her face was white enough to match the ground, her entire body shaking feverishly, her eyes glazed over and almost as milky as his. A door slammed open from the back edge of the room, and Emma's father burst in with his usual entourage of Shane Daniels, as well as another man, Jordan barely only recognized. Tate Schuler, the Minister of the Constitution. What business he had at a training session was anyone's guess, though he, like Emma, looked rather white in the face. Daniels was his usual stoic professional self. Garen was absolutely livid. For some reason, Jordan expected him to start screaming and swearing, but he only clenched his jaw and spoke in a firm voice. "Who saw it happen?" Emma, who could not see her father, began hyperventilating at the sound of his voice. Margot knelt down beside her and started rubbing her back gently. 3 men from the command center raised their hands awkwardly, as did Johnny. "With Shane," he demanded. "Now!" His voice carried, echoing through the dome's ceiling like a distant explosion. Kent and Liz looked his way for help. Jordan shrugged, as terrified as they were. Garen turned to Xander. "Clark, you get the other 3 undressed and home. No one leaves until everyone understands today did not happen. Is that clear?" Xander looked ready to wet himself. "Yes, sir." "Good." Garen dismissed them to the dressing room. "Margot, you come with me and Schuler." They began hobbling off the training floor. Jordan tried to sneak a glance back at Margot, but was stopped by Xander, who glared at him and pushed him back the other way. Johnny and the others had disappeared upstairs, out of his range of vision. The door was still shattered when they returned to the back, but someone had been in to sweep the shards off the carpet. "What the hell was that about?" Kent broke when he heard the exterior door seal them in from the hallway. "Zip it," Xander demanded. He looked uncertain himself, which made him that much more intimidating. "But how's it she gets the break?" Liz prodded. "I can't be the only one who saw what I saw it, though. Why does everything shut down for her?" Xander threw a flexed finger in her face and marched uncomfortably close. "That privilege," he began, "that's keeping you out of harm's way. You of all people know that. Don't make me remind you why you're here." Liz's eyes floated between the boys, her face gaining all the color Emma had lost. Xander had clearly struck a nerve. Jordan was the only one with the courage to ask another question. "Why'd they take Johnny?" Xander spun on the spot, but hesitated, no answer prepared. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I don't have any clue. I don't know what happened, I don't know why they're responding this way, and I don't know what this means for the squad." He swallowed hard. "But the orders come from above me. You heard the Prime Minister. We do not speak about this. We do not ask questions about this. Whatever is going on is above you, is above me, is above anyone not named Garen, so it's in all of our best interest to drop it." Xander turned, waiting for agreement from each of them in turn. Jordan joined Liz in nodding their understanding, though he still had every intention of learning what Johnny had seen. Emma wasn't just his squad mate, she was his friend, And if it involved Margot too, then his best interest was to find out and keep them safe. Their agreement was interrupted by Kent. "What if someone asked us what we did today?" he argued. "The Prime Minister said today didn't happen." Jordan felt the words spill from his teeth. "Who's going to ask you?" he said. "What friends are you talking to about our training?" He couldn't stop himself. "They lying up in bed with you all day?" Xander turned to scold him, but Kent did not miss a beat. "That's where you hide yours." Jordan propelled himself off his bench seat, but before he could even get to Xander, he was knocked to the ground in a cloud of purple mist. Liz had her hand outstretched, matched by Kent in a defensive hold of his crutches. "Boys!" Xander screamed. "How about we all just calm the f*** down and accept our options, huh?" Kent flipped him off behind Xander's back. "Review the options," Xander repeated. "We don't have any. Today didn't happen. Say you stayed home and watched, I don't know, 90210 or something. I don't know what you kids watch anymore. Just..." He took several deep breaths, but could not find the words to end his thoughts. "Go home," he finally concluded. "Kent and Liz, go home." "What?" All three of them growled in opposition. "You heard me," he repeated. "Jordan, you stay with me." Jordan threw up his hands. "But he's the one who..." Xander's glare stopped him in his tracks. "Fine." He continued to sit on the ground while the other two undressed in front of him. Finally, they exited through the broken door and out into the main hall. "Do you know something you shouldn't?" Xander broke, once the outer door had once again sealed. "What?" Jordan said, taken aback. "What do you know about Emma that I don't?" Xander repeated, a sense of urgent curiosity in his eyes Jordan had never seen. Jordan stuttered. I don't know. What do you know?" "You tell me." Xander rallied with the same intensity. Jordan took a step back. I don't know," he said again. "She's overly sarcastic. She's insecure about herself in every way you can imagine. She's got a weird obsession with conspiracies in the city of Houston." He expected to be interrupted, but Xander remained silent. He added, "She's super close with her brother." "Andrew?" Xander poked. "No, Riley," Jordan clarified. "The one in Italy." "He left as a freshman, right?" Jordan nodded. "Why?" "Well," he admitted, "no one knows, do they? That's why she's so anxious all the time, especially around her family. People don't just transfer out as soon as they start in the program." Xander doubled. Jordan's mind jumped back to Liz. "Does she blame anyone for him leaving?" Jordan bit his lip to keep from laughing. "Everybody but herself," he claimed. "Mostly her dad, but she's pissed at her mom, and Andrew too. Only person in that house she finds innocent is Margot." Xander stared pensively. "What's her relationship like with her dad?" "Hates him," he admitted bluntly. "Well, not hates necessarily. I think she's scared of him and scared of screwing up in front of him. I think she's worried she's going to end up like him." "Do you know any more than that?" Jordan paused, skeptical, but answered honestly. "Not that I can think of," he said. "Why?" Xander dropped his gaze, then walked around the room as though he was talking to himself. "Because something happened on the floor that shouldn't have happened," he refreshed. "The Prime Minister doesn't just show up on an afternoon if something goes wrong, even if it's his kid." "And you want to know why?" Jordan concluded. Xander shook his head. "Not me," he claimed. "But the company needs to know if something's going on." "Like what?" "I have no idea." Xander scratched his face. "Maybe I'm reading too far into things. Maybe it's inappropriate to be bringing this up in front of a 15-year-old. No, it's..." Jordan wanted to say fine, but his brain jumped to another conclusion. "Are you asking me to spy for you?" Xander's face had minimal response to his question. The two stared callously at one another. "No," Xander admitted. "Not spying. I just..." He paused. "If you see something, if you hear anything you think I should know, she's got a serious drinking problem," Jordan blurted out. He wasn't sure why he even said it. "For a 14-year-old, I mean. She hides bottles of vodka underneath the kitchen sink for when she's stressed." This revelation finally hindered a response. "She what? Does her dad know?" "No," Jordan cleared. "But he did know about her disappearing down to Denver for the weekend. Underage driving, mind you. Not drunk, but still. So he's covering for her." Jordan shrugged. "Do you think she was drunk on the floor?" Xander prodded. The alcohol seemed to have piqued his interest. "Absolutely not," Jordan warded. "I was with her for 20 minutes. I would have known." "All right," Xander relinquished. "Anything else?" Jordan was desperate to be done talking about his friends, but something pulled the words straight from his head. One thing, he concluded, failing to keep his mouth shut. Xander glared patiently. She spent the night with Johnny last night. Xander opened his mouth twice to speak, but failed both times. Finally, on a third go, he knit his eyebrows. How do you know this? I can see everything, Jordan stated bluntly. Xander pursed his lips. Well, keep your one eye on that, he said, and tell me if there's anything I should know. Jordan knew himself to be dismissed and walked back home alone. Halfway there, he realized how much he'd betrayed his friend's confidence, his brother's confidence, and he cursed himself for it. When he reached the common room, Kent and Liz were sitting on opposite chairs, clearly discussing what had happened. Hey! He shouted sternly when he kicked off his shoes. Xander told us not to talk about it. They stared at him uneasily, perhaps waiting for a follow-up, but Jordan walked straight through them on his way to his room. The thoughts about Johnny's trust became more fervent as his brother stared at him from atop his gray dresser. The picture was less than a year old, but they had both changed so much in that time, at least physically, that it felt like another lifetime. Hammering this thought home was his mother's cracked smile between them, her black face lined and aged from years of service and taking the place of 3 other parents. Jordan pulled off his shirt and threw it at the photo, knocking it and a much older picture of his father backward and out of sight. All the better, he thought. The shower helped calm his nerves, but once his hair dried and the stupid pocked color returned, his anger returned. Luckily, so had Johnny. Jordan walked out into the common room where Johnny was standing between the couches, fumbling through channels to find the first 2 Monday night football games. Hey, Jordan mumbled. Johnny looked up, emotionless. Hey, he returned. What did Shane have to say? Nothing crazy, he admitted. Probably the same thing you were told. Keep your mouth shut? Johnny nodded. Yeah, but you were the one who saw what happened, Jordan pestered. They didn't try to brainwash you? Johnny stayed stone-faced, but puffed a laugh through his nose. If they could, they probably would have, he admitted. Geez, what happened? Johnny turned, his face dark. I really can't say anything, he stated. Those are my orders. I'm your brother, Jordan wanted to push, but the hypocrisy was not lost on him. Keeping it inside kept it from being real. There was an awkward air of silence between them. Look, Jordan broke, sauntering into one of the chairs. I'm not in the mood to go to school tonight, or anywhere else for that matter. What do you say we order a pizza from downstairs and watch football till the girls come back? Johnny nodded in agreement. Half an hour later, they were both in pajama pants and t-shirts, the TV muted after the first game, and a large pepperoni sat between them. You know I'm going to keep asking you, Jordan continued. Johnny frowned, keeping his mouth shut. Jordan gritted his teeth. John, I know you slept with Emma last night. His brother's face dropped. He stuttered, trying to find some route to defend himself. It didn't... He swallowed hard. You're blackmailing me? Jordan kept his composure. I'm not blackmailing you. You are! Johnny huffed. You're trying to use that as leverage. His face dropped to a worry. Don't you dare tell Margot. I'm not going to tell Margot. Swear it! Johnny demanded, his face becoming as red as his hair. Swear it on your mom! Fuck my mom, Jordan swore. Johnny cringed like he had just defaced God. She's dead, and the sooner we come to terms with that, the better you and I will be. Jordan, Johnny growled. You know she is, he doubled. I know she is too, and after the mess we went through today, I don't ever want to think about her again. Johnny breathed hard, his chest rising visibly under his white shirt. It wasn't like you and Margot, he said defensively. How do you sleep with someone not like that? Jordan asked. For the last time, we don't like each other, Johnny screamed. I think she's been having panic attacks. She couldn't sleep last night, so I agreed to help her fall asleep. It was for the squad, if anything. Jordan remembered hearing the glass shatter in the middle of the night. Johnny would have been clueless about the alcohol. Is that what happened today? He wondered aloud. What? She had another panic attack on the floor, didn't she? Johnny bit his lip, again breathing deep. Swear to me, he said again. Jordan held his hand up honestly. Johnny looked at the stairs. Is Kent here? Jordan felt upstairs. He and Liz were in a room sitting on the floor watching something together. We're good, Jordan vouched. They can't hear us. No cameras or bugs? Of course not. He didn't even need to look. The company had a strict no surveillance policy, especially in rooms. Johnny sighed again. Picking up another slice of pizza, having risen to their feet in the heat of the argument, they sat once more. You're right, he finally admitted. That's why she was on the floor. That's not why they stopped training, though, Jordan mused. Is it? Johnny dropped his eyes to the floor. No. So what's Garen covering up? Johnny looked back up, his eyes desperate to be believed. I genuinely don't know. Like, Shane never even brought up what happened. He just said not to repeat it outside the room for fear of penalty. Then the control guys were taken out, and he just chatted to me about specialized training. What does that mean? Johnny shrugged. He thinks my memory isn't the full extent of my effect, he explained. He called my memory a surface level ability. He thinks there's more hidden underneath. He gave me his number to call him when I have the time. Jordan grimaced. The DPM gave you his phone number? That's... He hesitated. Weird. The words creepy and predatory popped into his head. Johnny just shrugged again. So he wants you to train privately? Not exactly, Johnny denied. He wants to get me in contact with people who know more about brain-based effects. He says there's a specialist in Scotland who would take me in over the summer if I wanted. What'd you say? Another shrug. I told him I'd think about it. And then he just let you leave? Yeah, he relieved. No brainwashing. No cover-up. Johnny turned even more sullen, clearly conflicted about admitting something out loud. Jordan, he said, I don't think it's the panic attack they want to cover up. Jordan squinted in concentration. What do you mean? Johnny closed his eyes hard, deciding on what to say. I mean, I saw what caused the attack. The room fell silent. What do you mean? Jordan repeated far softer. Emma missed a throw. 1,000 different emotions flooded Johnny's face. So what? So her effect, he marked, was ineffective. Jordan wasn't following. Yeah, so what? He said again. Mine doesn't work sometimes. No, yours doesn't work when it has reason not to work, Johnny argued. Yours doesn't always work on the training floor because the floor is always moving. It throws you off. Johnny was completely right. It was like sand, but everywhere else he could see clearly. So maybe something caused her to miss, Jordan defended. It was point blank. Maybe she did it on purpose, he argued, trying to deduce what Johnny was avoiding accusing outright, but before Johnny could answer, the door opened, and the girls returned to the common room. Instinctively, the boys curled around the couches to greet them, but the girls just stood in the doorway awkwardly. Margot looked joyless. All her usual color had drained completely from her face, and somehow Emma looked worse. Small no longer described just her features or her height. Standing next to Margot, tear-stained cheeks and red eyes bulbous in a round skull, she felt somehow lesser than Jordan had ever seen her. Margot looked like she'd carried Emma's weight the entire way back. He opened his mouth to speak, to at least offer a welcome back home, but words continued to fail him. The look in Margot's eyes made him expect her to run and hug him, but to the surprise of everyone in the room, most of all herself, Emma lunged forward and buried herself in Johnny's chest. The three still standing all had their mouths open. Johnny held up his hands innocently, unsure of what to do with Emma bawling into his shirt, until Margot managed to close her mouth and give him a nudging nod, after which his arms wrapped tightly around Emma and he caged her in a tight hug. Margot held out a hand for Jordan. Come on, she said, guiding him to her room. She shut the door behind them, but his attention remained on Johnny and Emma, who remained stationary in the middle of the entryway. It wasn't until he realized Margot had pulled off her shirt that he focused on the room in front of him. You all right? He managed, taking a seat on the edge of her black bedspread. Why wouldn't I be? She deflected. What happened? He pressed. She put her hands against his face and kissed him hard. It's not my place to tell, even to you. He was tired of asking questions, so he fell onto his back, refusing to continue and staring up at the twinkling lights Margot had strung across her ceiling. She lay down next to him, staring for a moment too before rolling atop his limp body and kissing him from nose to neck. It was the one thing he had thought about all day, but now that they were together, the thing she had promised was the last thing he wanted. His stomach still fluttered at the idea, but he was so tired, and with everything that had happened, it almost felt inappropriate. Stop, he refused, his shirt to his wrists. Margot looked taken aback, even affronted by his hesitation. What? Not tonight, he closed. I can't. She threw his shirt on top of her dresser, sitting up where she was. He wanted to punch himself in the face. Margot looked beautiful, her hair pulled back, her makeup somehow unmarked after the complete marathon of the day. He still wanted it. He still wanted her, but he couldn't. He just couldn't. Johnny and Emma had left the common room now, but Jordan didn't care to look where they'd gone. This was the only thing he wanted to focus on, but what he had seen on the floor kept replaying over and over in his mind. He sat up, nearly knocking Margot onto the floor in the process, then edged his way to the headboard where he pulled his knees to his chest. "What's wrong?" she asked, literally crawling toward him across the bed until she sat beside him, wrapping her arms around him. The side of his brain not in control of his body was trying to strangle the side that was. He swallowed, staring at the floor. "Who'd you see?" he voiced. "We all saw something pretending to be someone we knew. Who did you see?" She released her grip, moving a hand to his bare shoulder blades. "You," she said. Jordan expected this answer. Maybe she was telling the truth, but he had a feeling there was more. "Who else?" "Just you," she started, until she noticed him grinning doubtfully. I don't want to think about Quebec." She had switched to French. "You can tell me what happened," he replied just the same. "No," she cursed. "I'm over it. I'm here now. I don't ever have to return to that place." It was the only thing Margot kept covered. The one thing about her he did not know. In their years of friendship and now a week of dating, she still wouldn't tell him about her family. "The Garens are my family," she insisted, holding his face in her hands again. "You are my family. Can't you trust me when I say that?" "How can I trust you if I don't know you?" he prodded one final time. "This isn't up for debate," she deflected, for the first time all night looking angry, and Jordan knew the effort was lost. "Was the rest of it fine?" he said, switching back to English. French only made him think of his mother again. "I got shot twice," she shrugged. "But otherwise, yeah. After the, memory lane part, I found Johnny and saved him from Emma." "He saw Emma?" Jordan wondered aloud. He figured it could have been Johnny's dad, but he supposed that too would have been too definitive. But why Emma? Suddenly, Johnny's justification for his night with Emma held less weight. Yeah, Margot confirmed. And then the weirdest thing of the entire freaking day happened. "You got pulled underwater by an octopus?" he remembered. "What?" She laughed, only then noticing Jordan's scratched ribs. "Oh, mon Dieu, what happened?" Jordan felt his hand against his own stomach. It hardly hurt anymore. "Giant octopus," he joked. Margot's face turned to one of genuine concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," he pacified. "Only stings, if anything." She put her hand over his. "Is Emma all right?" he continued. "She will be," Margot stated. "Her dad'll keep us all safe like he always does." "Is that a bad thing?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "I won't have to worry about you going anywhere." She kissed him on the cheek again, and this time he let it happen. "With my track record, you're the one we should be worried about." She stopped, pulling back abruptly. "You saw your mom, didn't you?" "My dad would have been too easy," he argued. "Still," she pouted. "They could have given you your birth parents or something." He considered the idea for a moment. "I don't think that would have been effective," he said. "Introduce me to a complete stranger only to have them disappear a few minutes later?" "Yeah, but what they did to you was cruel." He flushed a smile away before resorting to the ground again. "I know she's dead," he said. "She has to be." "You can't think like that," Margot began. "No, but I have to think like that." His voice raised to a shout. "She didn't have a fucking reason to go back, and her being dead is the only way to frame her as any kind of hero." He couldn't stop himself from crying. "I strangled her," he flooded. "I crushed the life out of her, and then I shot her, and I'd do it every day for the rest of my goddamn life if I could, because I just fucking hate her for leaving us." His tears had turned to sob, and he could not help it. He crumpled into Margot's chest just like Emma had done, and cried. Margot breathed deep. "Talk to Johnny about it." "Why?" he shouted. "So he can lift my spirits with all his hope bullshit? And how dare he criticize me for not loving my mom for what she did? Isn't he the one who's been pissed at his dad all these years? We don't have to beg for a single thing in this town for the rest of his life because of his dad, and he has the gall to consider that a suicide mission?" His eyes were so badly burning he could hardly keep them open. "And now we've got to worry about Kent and his stupid broken leg? And Liz and whatever the hell she's hiding?" His voice dropped as the anger continued to pour out. "Xander wants me to spy on Emma, by the way, so if you have any material that might boost my role, now would be a great time to admit whatever Bill was yelling at you about back at the training center." Jordan hadn't meant to say that part out loud, and its effect was immediate. Margot's face went whiter than her sheets. "What?" There was no way to backtrack. "Shit. Margot, you cannot tell anyone I told you that. Not Emma, not the Garens, and especially not Johnny. I don't think he trusts me right now as it is." She held out her hand, fingers open wide. He hesitated. What was she playing at? Do you trust me? She said softly. What? He whispered. Of course I... Do you trust me? She said again, louder and sterner than before. He gulped. Yes. Good, she resolved, pulling him into a tight hug. I trust you too. Even if I keep things from you, I don't want to go back to in my head. It's not healthy, for you or me. She let go and he stared into her eyes for a moment. She traced her hand down his scar before resting it under his jaw again. I love you, he relented. Her eyes thinned and sparkled. I love you too, she returned. I think you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Yeah, you better, she grinned. And I trust you, he admitted. Completely. I trust you too, she said again, pulling the covers over her knees and falling onto her back beneath them. And if it makes you feel any better, you're not the only one who's glad their parents are dead.